This is the Nike Vomero 16. It's Nike's attempt at a max cushion shoe, a category that Nike has typically had some difficulty with. But at least in the US, this is the first year that we're seeing the addition of ZoomX foam to the Vomero line. Will that be enough to make this a great running shoe? It's time to lace up the Vomero 16 and take them for a run. .27 miles, 9 minutes, 8 seconds per mile, 146 beats per minute today, going for a nice and easy first run in the Vomero 16. Now, before I give you my thoughts on this shoe after just this short first run, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that I purchased myself. No one sent it to me. No one's paying me to make this video. And no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Nike Vomero 16. Now, the Vomero 16 is something that I've been waiting for a long time. There's a bit of history there. I loved the Vomero 14. The Vomero 15 had some, I don't know if it was production issues or some supply chain problems, but it never made it to the US, at least as far as I know. I think some places in Asia, I think the UK were two places that got it, but I don't think we saw the Vomero 15 in the United States, even though I was super excited for it, because Vomero 15 was technically the first place that ZoomX foam made it into this shoe. But now in the Vomero 16, whatever those issues are have been resolved, and now we're getting it for the US. And what we have here is 29.5 millimeters of stack height in the heel with a 10 millimeter drop, pretty standard for a Nike running shoe, at least for their trainers. And that gives us 19.5 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. Now, in terms of what's in that stack height, I believe there's actually three things that's in here, even though if you look at kind of the side, what's printed on the shoe, it looks like it's ZoomX and Zoom Air. At least that's what they want you to like focus on. But my understanding, and I haven't seen a schematic of it, and I haven't like seen anyone cut this shoe open yet, but my understanding of it is there's Zoom Air in the forefoot, there's ZoomX kind of like around and kind of working with that Zoom Air pocket, but that's kind of like a core, and around that there's a carrier of a third foam that I'm not sure what it is. I think some people are saying it's Cushlon, which is what used to be in the Pegasus line. Some people are saying it's SRO2, at least that's what they said was in the Vomero 15. I think those two foams are pretty similar, if not the same. I'm not sure what the difference is between those two foams, but I believe that there's three things going on in this foam. On the outsole, we have a beautiful color, at least in the outsole for this version of the shoe, that looks a lot like what's been in the Pegasus in terms of like the outer wall that's over here on the lateral side of the shoe, and then more of these lugs that look very similar on the medial side of the shoe that remind me a lot of what's in the Pegasus. Moving up top, we have a dual layer mesh in the forefoot, which is pretty roomy, especially for a Nike shoe. I didn't feel crunched in there, so definitely a Nike fit, but roomy for Nike, if that makes sense. I went true to size with mine, and that was the exact right size to go with. Moving more towards the midfoot, that's where we just start seeing a lot of stuff, and it gets a little bit more like convoluted as we go further back on the shoe. So we've got kind of like this saddle type of approach here in terms of structure around the midfoot that's covering a wider style of fly wire kind of supports that are in this shoe, and then underneath all the lacing system and all these kind of like saddle supports is a gusseted and very, very padded tongue. It's so pilly soft. There's like a weird crease back here. It reminds me of the corner of like a hotel bed. There's just so much padding. I don't like padded tongue, so like seeing this is just like an eyesore for me. Just a lot of padding, but if you like padded tongues, this is one that you want to take a look at because there's so much just foam up here, and that continues all the way through into the back. There is a lot of padding up in here. This heel cup is just, they've wrapped around like the interior fabric over on top of the heel to kind of even further like kind of highlight how much padding there is back here. And this heel cup is very well structured. Not only is there plastic armor on the outside of the heel cup, there's a lot of structure in the inside of the heel cup as well. And I feel like this heel cup really comes far around over the top of the heel. So if you want lockdown on a heel, this is kind of gonna be a shoe that is gonna make you very, very happy. For me, I like it when the heels are floppy on a shoe, but this is the exact opposite of floppy. There's just, I haven't seen this much structure in the back of a Nike running shoe in a long time, but there is plenty of it back here. All told, this comes in at a stated weight of 10.9 ounces, but Nike listed that as a size 10 for US men. I'm a US men's size 9, which is usually the size people are talking about when they're like listing weights on the internet. And so I went and I measured this shoe myself, and on my scale, this shoe weighed in at 10.0 ounces on the dot. I mean, if I were Nike, I'd just be like, figure out a way to make it like 0.1 ounce lighter so you can at least get it in the 9s for the weight. But it's 10.0 ounces and coming in at 286 grams. So with all those specs out of the way, let's talk about what it's like to run in this shoe. And I will say that this shoe is refreshing. It was a surprise to me. I wasn't quite sure what to expect in the Vomero 16. I didn't run in the Vomero 15, and my last experience with the Vomero, I think my only experience with the Vomero was the Vomero 14. And with this shoe, I felt like this was a reminder of why I fell in love with Nike shoes years ago to begin with. And so for me, this is like a blast from the past with a little bit of the future injected into it. And I'm just absolutely loving it. The midsole feels really smooth for my daily training, easy run speed. Right now I'm tapering for my first triathlon is coming up on Sunday. So I'm taking it easy. I would have loved to have taken this shoe for a much longer run because the miles just flew by. I didn't have to really think about the shoe at all. It just felt like a great running shoe. I ran on dirt roads and some pavement for today, and the shoe was able to handle both of them really well. It's not a trail shoe, and so like some of the rocks that I was running on the dirt roads, I did feel them underfoot. Nothing was painful. I didn't find myself like avoiding like certain parts of the dirt road to avoid rocks or anything. I was able to kind of go wherever. So like if you're running dirt roads, this is definitely going to be a shoe that you're going to be able to handle it on. And if you're going to spend a lot of time on paved surfaces, I think this shoe is going to handle it really well. It feels like a daily trainer should. It feels like you're just out there running and the shoe is taking a little bit of the edge from the pavement off. As much as they've added just a bunch of stuff onto this shoe, like from a visual perspective and from like a structural perspective, especially when we get towards the heel of the shoe in terms of the upper, I feel like from a running dynamics perspective, it's like back to basics. And that's what I feel like for this shoe. I just feel like it's a really solid daily trainer. I feel like this shoe is going to have a lot of range because it's not that heavy. I felt like it was going to be able to handle not only my easy days, but I feel like this is going to be a great long run shoe, and I can't wait to put some long runs in it after the triathlon this weekend. And then I'll be buckling down for Chicago Marathon training. So this shoe will be getting a lot of work in terms of some longer runs as well. And I can't wait to do that because I just felt like it was not a lot of stuff I had to think about. Nothing that was weird and unusual or new or futuristic. It just felt like a solid Nike running shoe. And I don't want to say solid as in it was blocky, but it was just a quality Nike running experience. And I just really enjoyed it. It reminded me of why I really loved like the first Nike Pegasus that I ran in, which was the Nike 32. Like it just reminded me of that, but it felt like that, but it had a little bit more cushion to it. So I just absolutely had a fantastic time in it in just the first run. And when I was done with the run, I was disappointed that it was over because I was having so much fun. So now let's talk about the upper, because this shoe is by far from being perfect. So the upper, I think actually this shoe looks great, and I don't even mind that it's blue, although to me, I'm a little bit colorblind. I think this is like navy or maybe purple, but I think that I'm really liking the design. I feel like this kind of gray midsole, when Nike does like a gray midsole, I think it looks fantastic. So I'm liking the design, and this up from like here up, I feel like we've definitely got, they pulled it off like an old Pegasus, and it just feels great. The mesh is nice and flexible, but they've updated it because the toe box feels just a little bit wider to make it feel not so like squished. So I'm really enjoying the toe box, and I think for a max cushion shoe or for a long run shoe, that is the exact kind of update that I would want to see in the toe box. Then we start kind of like moving further back, and it's still retro-ish, you know, because of the way that the fly wire system is designed in the shoe. Definitely reminds me of the Peg 32. The techniques and like the concepts are the same, but instead of like having the very thin laces that were kind of like pinching down the sides of your foot, we've got like wider bands to kind of make it so that some of these cinch points aren't putting as much pressure on your foot. And to further alleviate that, or at least I think that's what the idea is here, is that like as you're cinching it down, you put more padding in the tongue so that way it doesn't put pressure on the top of your foot. I can't think of a shoe where I felt too much pressure on the top of my foot. I know that's an issue for some people, but for me, it's never an issue. So for me, padding, puffiness on a tongue is nothing but a sweat sponge, and this shoe is hot. And so like there's definitely gonna be a lot of sweat collecting and staying in this shoe, or if you get the shoes wet or if it's raining out, water's gonna get in here and stay in here. Same with all this padding and stuff that's in the back here. There's just a lot of padding, more than I need. For me, a comfortable heel is a flexible heel, but I know that there are people out there that need some of that stability control and like having that locked in feeling and like having all this padding in here. It feels very plush. So, I mean, the step-in comfort's great. The walking around comfort is great. But for me, for running a long distance, I'm not sure that I would really want all this stuff back here. It's just weight. It's just stuff that I feel like can either be heavy or collect sweat or water, and I just don't need it. So there's like a lot of messiness back here, but it's also pretty commensurate for what you would expect from a max cushion shoe. That's par for the course. I'm hoping that the genre kind of can move forward and find other ways to put comfort into the shoes that's not foam. Moving to the outsole, I felt like the grip was just fine on the surfaces that I was talking about, dirt roads and paved surfaces. I haven't taken on wet surfaces yet, but I have a feeling that based on this pattern and prior experience with Nike shoes that kind of look like this, that's not going to be any problem at all. I'm feeling like it's going to be pretty much an all-weather shoe in terms of at least the outsole grip. On the outsole itself, it lists it as a high abrasion rubber. I don't know if all Nike shoes are technically high abrasion rubber or if this is a higher abrasion rubber, but I definitely feel like there's plenty of rubber on the outsole, and it's not so much though that I feel like it's making the shoe cumbersome or stiff. So I still feel like it's a pretty flexible shoe. So I feel like the outsole, it's still working for me. So overall, I am pleasantly surprised with the Vomero 16. The Vomero has, I think, been, at least recently, has been an area where Nike kind of experiments with some of its running shoes. Now, I know they do an earlier level, or it seems to me from an outsider's perspective that they do even more like preliminary testing in some of their casual like run inspired shoes. They might put some technology in there, kind of see how it does, and maybe secretly release it that way so that people can kind of like play around with it. The Vomero line also seems to be a place where they play around with some stuff. So in the Vomero 14, I think if I'm remembering my history correctly, I think with the Vomero 14, that came after or in the same year that the Epic React came out. So the Epic React was React foam, and I believe the first Nike running shoe that had a full React midsole. The Vomero 14, I believe it was that same year, also had a React midsole, and we were thinking, oh, React in a running shoe, not like the kind of like casual / running designed running shoe, even though the Epic React was a fantastic running shoe. Like we were like, okay, so what does that mean? Does that mean we're gonna go React in the Pegasus? And then shortly thereafter we saw the Pegasus switch from the Cushlon carrier, which I think might be the foam that's carrying the ZoomX here. Rather than being Cushlon, the Pegasus moved to React. So now if we've got maybe Cushlon with ZoomX and a Zoom Air pocket in the Vomero 16, what does that mean for the Pegasus 39? Will the Pegasus 39 have ZoomX, another carrier, and a airbag in it, or will the Pegasus 39 just go with like forefoot and rear foot Zoom Air pockets? I'm not sure where it's going. I haven't seen any designs. I don't get any inside information from Nike on that kind of stuff. So it's just wild speculation at this point, but that's what this Vomero 16 makes me think about. I like what's going on in this shoe, and it makes me think, how will Nike take what they've learned from this shoe and how successful I think this is, and put it into more of their line. How do they kind of distribute that technology and those learnings to other shoes? I'm very excited for what this means for not only this shoe, but also for Nike in general. So I'll be testing this shoe a lot more, both as a max cushion shoe, but also as a daily trainer, because relatively speaking, from at least from what I've been seeing from Nike and Adidas in terms of their daily trainers, this is a pretty light one, ironically. So I'll definitely be testing against daily trainers and the max cushion shoes. So hit the subscribe button so you can see those battle videos as they come out. And if you have any questions about the Vomero 16, feel free to put them down in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do right here on YouTube Monday through Friday, and I'd love to be able to interact with you in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.